Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today I am talking about faith. Because people are putting more faith in computers than other humans. Studies are showing this, and this is fascinating. And I thought this would be an interesting way to end the week on a Friday. This is coming from Study Finds, and I think this would actually be a rather interesting conversation if you're so inclined to pipe up and comment on one of my various social media platforms. Now, there's a lot, obviously, of concern these days about technology. Things like artificial intelligence. Maybe it's too smart for its own good, but despite fear over how intrusive these algorithms are becoming, a new study finds that people are actually more willing to trust a computer than their fellow humans. Now, researchers at the University of Georgia say that this is especially true when people find tasks too challenging to handle alone. However, it's not just the heavy lifting humans are running to computers for help with. Everything from choosing the next song on a playlist to finding a better fitting pants. AI and algorithms are making more and more of these decisions in our lives, whether we realize it or not. And to quote Eric Bogert, he's one of the individuals there that is studying this, and I quote, "Algorithms are able to do a huge number of tasks, and the number of tasks they are able to do is expanding practically every day. It seems like there's a bias towards leaning more heavily on algorithms as a task gets harder, and that effect is stronger than the bias towards relying on advice from other people." I'm sorry if I butchered that, but basically what he's saying is the bias leans towards computers way more when you're trying to get tasks done than it is relying on fellow human beings. Now, researchers evaluated, and here's the criteria. They evaluated responses from 1,500 individuals tasked with counting the people in a series of photographs. The team also supplied participants with suggestions on how to do this, generated either by other people or computer algorithms. As the crowd in the photos got bigger and more difficult to count, volunteers were more likely to turn to computer suggestions rather than go with their gut or the quote-unquote wisdom of the crowd. Now, a co-author of the study, Aaron Schechter, says that counting tasks are a perfect way to measure trust in computers. As the number of people grows in each photo, the task becomes objectively harder for humans to perform. Therefore, the team basically adds these tasks, the research team adds these tasks, and they're also kind of problems that humans would expect computers to be good at solving. And to quote Schechter, "This is a task that people perceive that a computer will be good at, even though it might be more subject to bias than counting objects. One of the common problems with AI is when it is used for awarding credit or approving someone for loans. While that is a subjective decision, there are lots of numbers in there, like income and credit score, so people feel like this is a good job for an algorithm. But we know that dependence leads to discriminatory practices in many cases because of social factors that aren't considered." And this was actually one of the basis of my third TED Talk that I did about 2 years ago or so on basically, can technology help us defeat discrimination? We have some very serious problems right now. Now, just because a computer program is merely, a pile of data doesn't mean that bias doesn't exist. I talked about this in my talk as well. Now, Schechter notes that facial recognition and hiring algorithms have both been criticized over cultural biases built into their programs. A study by MIT essentially proved that as well, not to mention the Amazon recognition debacle, where all 535 members of the U.S. Congress were put against, basically their faces were put against the mugshot database of 10,000 convicted felons that didn't include their mugshots, and something like 27 members of Congress were tagged as criminals in that mugshot database due to the failure of the AI. That's obviously a huge problem. Now, these obviously can lead to inaccuracies with matching faces or screening people for qualifications for jobs and on and on. So although counting tasks, won't display bias like a very simple counting task, researchers caution that it's important basically to understand how machines arrive at more complex decisions. The study is also part of a larger report on human-machine collaboration that's being funded by the United States Army. And to quote Schechter again, "The eventual goal is to look at groups of humans and machines making decisions and find how we can get them to trust each other and how that changes their behavior. Because there's very little research in that setting, we're starting dealing with the fundamentals. Now, his team is also studying how people rely on algorithms to make creative and even moral judgments. These traditionally human tasks include things like writing original works of literature or setting bail for criminals. And this is rather interesting, and his actual research shows up in the journal Scientific Reports. But I think this is actually something that is just really interesting, because we have some inherent biases that we are building into artificial intelligence. It's not because we are intentionally saying we're going to be discriminatory in some way, shape, or form. It's simply that, if I am building an artificial intelligence to recognize my face, it's going to recognize my face a lot better than, let's say, somebody else's, because it's essentially trained on my face. And so as we expand artificial intelligence, as we expand these algorithms, as we start to basically make it more intuitive, if you will, it requires a wider data set, a more diverse data set, to ensure that it's going to be accuracy and less biased, and it needs to be peer reviewed. I think that's one of those things that we need to make sure is going on as well, that it's certified. And there was an incident back in the day when I believe it was Amazon, and they say that algorithm actually never selected it, but they were using an algorithm to weed through resumes, and it was doing something like giving demerit points to every single female that it could identify in terms of the resume. And it wasn't that they were intentionally, looking at this saying you're minus 50 points because you're a woman. It was simply something in the programming that said, oh, it sees this, therefore it lowers the score. And that happened to be inherent in women's resumes. And it's those kinds of things that we really need to look at, because obviously, we don't necessarily believe in an equal finish line, but we definitely believe in an equal starting line. And so this is really interesting, but we are putting our faith more and more. And I know I am guilty of this as well. When I go on to a music app, that I use, and it basically makes suggestions, it oftentimes has songs I'm like, yeah, this is actually pretty good. I would never have known that this singer or this band or whoever existed, if the algorithm hadn't basically understood the patterns of the type of music I like and then made suggestions. That's really cool. But then it also makes me wonder, what am I missing by simply relying on that? And I think that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.